Well, hey, y'all, Six Gunslinging here, and I'm going to do a knife review, kind of almost a long-term knife review on a knife that I've been carrying around and I have heavily used for quite some time now. And that is going to be on this this guy here. It's going to be the Cabela 110 Special Edition Alaskan Guide. I'm lucky enough to have a Cabela's pretty close to where I live. If you don't have one near you, you can certainly order this knife. When I got this knife, I had some Cabela points, and I had it was on sale. I think there was some other stuff going on. And I'd been looking at this knife for a while, of course, like you guys. I'm a 110 fan, and I've had this knife for, I want to say, about 8 years. Maybe, I think, closing on 10 years. I think it's been about 10 years, excuse me. And they still have it. They still make it. I don't think it's gone up too much. I think it may have gone up to, like, I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't know the current price of this knife. But it's the Cabela's 110 Alaskan Guide. When I got it on sale. Like I said, I had some points. And I ended up picking up this knife for about, I want to say $60. But they're regularly $99. And then the sale, and then that, I ended up getting it for $60. I had to get it for that. You just can't say no. And now this knife's a beautiful knife when you first get it. I've since put a lot of wear on it. This is a diamond-like coating they put on there. And give you a look around here. And you can see they had the Paul Bose heat treatment. The Paul Bose heat treatment, and then S30V on the other side. And it had a cool little sticker. I think it's like a little, it's like a little sticker thing that went right here that said Cabela's Alaskan Guide. And I know it's been a while because this was before Bass Pro ever bought out Cabela's. You know, Cabela's was their own entity. And anything that you bought that had a Cabela's name, I don't care if it was socks, anything, they gave you an unconditional lifetime warranty, and you'd go in there and they didn't ask you nothing. They didn't say nothing. They just replaced it. Since Bass Pro bought them out, they don't honor that anymore, and that's a real shame. And, you know, of course, you get the wonderful warranty from Buck, but they've kind of amended their warranty. But anything that carried the Cabela's name, they really stood behind their stuff. And I still like Cabela's, but it's not quite the same as it used to be. And this knife, it's a big guy, won't even fit in a frame hardly. See if I can, I'll just leave it like that. It's got these rosewood grips, and I think that's really classy looking. Like I said, I've used this knife a lot because I'm a big fan of the 110. It's got a little green on the, sorry about that, got a little green on the bolsters because I don't clean them up. You really kind of don't need to clean them up. You just use them, and when you wash them off with dish soap or whatever you're going to use, then they come right back to shiny and polished. So I've never taken a Brasso to a Buck 110 and cleaned it up and done all that. Some guys do. If you just use the thing, you really don't have to do all that. All the tarnish will wear off. And I think it looks cool with a little bit of natural patina anyway, a little tarnish. Just, you know, shows you actually used the knife. I didn't get this for collecting. I got it for using that S30V. Now, I tell you what, I've talked about it before, but the Buck knives and the Buck 110, their heat treat is second to none. They take 420 HE steel and they turn it into S30V. So, by that same rationale, if you take S30V steel and you heat treat it with the Paul Bose heat treatment, well, you get an excellent knife. It is, you know, it can be made extremely sharp and it holds an edge for an extremely long time. It's also extremely durable, and I've tested that. I've dropped this knife, done all kinds of stuff, and it's still, other than a little bit of wear on the diamond-like coating, like I said, that sticker has worn off, and where I open and close the knife, some of the writing has kind of worn off a little bit there, if you can see that. But other than that, I've had no problems with this knife. It does take a little because of the, the heat treatment. I don't remember what they Rockwell it to. I think it's 60 to 62, if I'm correct. Don't quote me on that because I can't remember, but I believe that's what it is. But this is like any other buck 110, except just a little bit better. Instead of those, before they were using ebony, which is what they're doing now, they use that, which is, it's a good wood. It's that diamond wood, which was a high pressure laminate. They were putting rosewood scales on these knives. Look, the centering is just great. Straight up Broadway, as old Big E says. If you ever watch his channel, you should check it out. But anyway, the fit and finish, while not dead absolute perfect, like if you run your fingernail, you can feel just the edge of that lock bar. I mean, barely, but you can feel it. It doesn't affect the knife. I mean, the knife's, pretty much perfect in every way. And when you get this thing new, of course, it's polished and beautiful looking. And you get this brown sheath with it. And it has the, and this is what they had on the blade of the knife, actually. But it has that sheep's head or ram. I guess it's supposed to be a bighorn ram. And it said Alaskan Guide on it. And it's a well-made sheath. It's pretty much just a standard buck 110 sheath. It's just brown. And, of course, they've always done that. They've done that since the 70s, these reinforced rivets up here at the top. And they sew them up really good. And these are really high-quality sheaths. This one's like new because I don't hardly use it. I've been carrying it in a open-top belt pouch sheath. This is how I carried this knife. And I've carried this knife, I've carried it quite a bit, more than almost any other knife I have. I've paired it with one of my other favorite knives is a Case, a large Stockman. But this knife, it is heavy duty and it'll get everything you need done. And not only that, I live in kind of a small space here. So what I did with this knife is a friend and I were talking, it's over a couple beers, which is usually how stuff starts. And we were saying, like, what if you just had one knife and you just used it? I've talked about that before on my channel. But if you just had one knife and you used it for everything. So I did. Everything I cooked, everything I did outside of the house, I used this knife for. And I carried it for a year like that. I discipline, and it's hard to do, but I disciplined myself where I just used this knife. When I cooked up dinner, I used this knife. When I was out doing EDC tasks or barbecuing outside, whatever, it doesn't matter what it is, I use this knife. And after I stopped that experiment, I just kept this knife out and kept using it as a kitchen knife because it was so effective, for cutting up vegetables, cutting up anything. And then I used it. It acted like a paring knife. It acted like a chef's knife, whatever. I just used this knife. And, I wanted to see how it would hold up to, being wet all the time, from, numerous washing it off with soap and water and all that stuff. And it held up true because the tagline on this knife was, it's made for an Alaskan guide. It's made for somebody that takes people from salmon fishing to deer hunting to elk hunting to whatever. And it's true to the name. It holds up. I have used it. I've cut, everything with this knife. I mean, you name it. It's still razor sharp. It's got scrape your nail there. It's razor sharp. It's held that edge. I've only stropped it a couple times, and I have used the crap out of this knife. And that would tell me that if you're looking for a buck 110 and you want something a little bit different but not too different, get one with an S30V blade. If you don't get the Cabela's Alaskan Guide, if for some reason you don't like the looks or, whatever, you can get on Buck's website and you can order a custom knife. You can get silver bolsters. I think there's a couple other options. You can get deer antler or whatever for the covers. I mean, there's a lot of options that you can get, and you can order it with an S30V blade. I don't know if I don't think they offer, or they may, the diamond-like coating. I think they offer another black coating. I have a custom that's got black oxide on it. But either way, like, and if you wanted to save a couple bucks, I would say if you ordered this Alaskan guide, by the time you option one out on Buck's website, it comes out cheaper, and you're getting a knife that's a little bit different, and it is certainly that S30V and the Paul Bose heat treatment. They are a match made in heaven. You are getting a super high quality, durable knife, and it's everything that you could want. Like I just did a review on a Benchmade. You can have a high speed knife that'll come out in a millionth of a second. It'll cut molecules before you can even blink an eye. If you want all that, there's nothing wrong with that. You can have that. But if you just want a good pocket knife, well, actually, I wouldn't carry it in a pocket. It's a little too big. But a good belt knife, just a good knife, get you a buck 110 with that 30V. All right, get you any buck 110 for that matter. I'm a huge fan. That's why I got a bunch of these things. But I can tell you for a fact I did test this one, over a 10-year period. Used it pretty much for everything. Definitely, I used it for a kitchen knife for probably about 4 or 5 years. It's the only knife I had. I left it on the counter, and when I cut up dinner to do whatever, I used this knife. And it was so handy, I just kept using it, I feel really comfortable with the buck 110 on my side, doing anything. I've skinned deer. I've skinned a couple of deer with this one. This one did do some hogs though, because I lived down in San Antonio for a while, and we went on a hog hunt, and this one went through about 3 hogs. And the place we went, the ranch we went, they had some Mexican guys from Mexico that knew how to cook them really good, and I lent them this knife, and they skinned up all them hogs, and they made cracklings out of them, and some chicharrones and some other stuff. Those guys really know what they're doing, and this guy was really, he was trying to buy this knife from me, and I was like, no, but that's, especially after I saw how well it held up, I loved it even more. So this did about, I think 3 or 4 hogs, I can't remember, that we had shot down there, and did a couple deer that I shot, and it's done 1 million dinners. I can tell you that. I've cut up, used it for everything. And I can absolutely report that the buck 110 is a fantastic knife. The centering on it's real good. Straight up Broadway, as we said earlier. It's got a little green on the brass because this knife has brass bolsters. That's the way they used to do things. Brass is a really incredible material. It's bacteria resistant. It's it's not too expensive. It's really durable. It is sort of soft, and most knives are, the metals they use for bolsters. But if you were to go using this as a hammer, you could dent up, and I have a couple knives like that. You could really dent up this brass. But people do it all the time, You could use this as a hammer if you put something in between when you're whacking it. But it would hold up if you used it to whack your tent stakes with or whatever. This would be who is this knife for? Really anybody. It's a great camping knife, great hiking knife if you're not going too far because it is heavy. Might be something you could put in your pack. It's a great EDC knife. It's a great farm knife, great ranch knife, and this one has done all those things. It's a great, just a great all-around everything knife. And, so much has been said about the 110, just this Alaskan guide with those rosewood scales and this S30V blade. I can't sing enough high praise for this knife. I love it. I've only sharpened it a couple of times. I've only needed to sharpen it a couple of times. After they skinned those hogs, it was still real sharp. I think I ran it over a sharp maker a little bit and stropped it, and it was back to razor sharp. So even after all that, I think on the deer, and the thing that gets you when you're with hogs or a deer or any animal is that the skin, the animal skin, it also has some dirt and other debris on there, and it's really rough on the knife edge. That's once you get through, that's why they make those zipper knives that's like a little hook, and it it catches in there and it zippers through. They call them caping zippers or whatever. Those things are pretty good at getting around that. If you if you use your knife for actual just skinning, it's liable to last a lot longer. And you obviously when you're gonna quarter a deer, you don't want to be trying to cut through bone and sinew with your pocket knife. You should carry a knife. I have a little saw that I used, a silky saw, but you want to use a saw or some other type thing to get through those joints, and because that can really tear up your blade. A lot of guys will do that with their pocket knife. I wouldn't do that. So, what else can I say about this knife? Like any buck 110, it's heavy. Because if you look, I'll show you around, the brass frame of this knife, it's all one solid piece. It's a big, heavy machined out piece of brass. And then they inlay these rosewood grips and they inlay the blade. But it is relatively heavy, not undoable. I mean, be a man about it. You don't have to have something that weighs 1/10 of an inch. Like, I like Old Nothing Fancy, but he's like, I won't carry a knife if it weighs more than, 2 molecules. It ain't no good. That's fine. I'm not one of those guys. Like I said, there's not much to be said that it's not said about any buck 110. It is a fantastic knife. That tip has been dropped on the ground. It is still super pointy and sharp. It didn't do a thing to it. This knife's never been back to buck. It's never had to. It doesn't have any blade play up or down, zero side to side. And it has been and still is a fantastic knife. And being S30V and all that, doesn't need a lot of lubricant. You might every once in a while spray a little lubricant in the joints. But if you're going to use it for food, you got to be careful what type of lubricant. I would use mineral oil. Because, or anything that's food safe, I stay away from petroleum products. Because like I said, my exclusive food knife, it's all I used for quite some time. If you have any questions, leave them down there. Leave them down below. Or tell me about your experiences with your buck 110, specifically one with an S30V blade. I could not be happier. In fact, I've said it before, but I'll go back again for this video. But talking about Paul Bose, he's been with buck, I think, since 1966. And Paul Bose, he perfected this heat treatment where, number one, the S30V, we have to talk about it. It is made by a company called Crucible Metals. And what they do is they powder this steel. It's made from... They make the formulation, and then I think they spin it in a center. I don't know exactly how they do it, but then they powder it. And then they powder it, and then after they powder it, they make billets out of it. And from those billets, a blade are cut. And the reason they do that, and it goes through a process called martinization, and the reason they do that, and they start off with that powdered formula, is that all of the molecules in the steel are evenly distributed. All of the carbon, all of the chrome vanadium, other molecules that are in the steel. And then when they turn it into a billet, you're getting a homogeneous, almost pure steel where all of the molecules are centered just perfectly throughout the billet. And what that does is it gives you a really high quality edge. Then when they heat it, it all comes together and homogenizes even further. And then as they're tempering it and when they cool it, that's another important process, is how they cool that steel. And that's done through, they have different ways. Some steels can be air cooled. I'm not going to do a whole dissertation on steels, but some steels can be air cooled. Some have to be oil cooled. Some are water quenched, not many, but some are water quenched. And after they do that, to relieve the stresses even further, I believe part of the nobody really knows his exact treatment because it's a highly guarded secret. But part of the thing they do is they cryogenically they get the steel incredibly cold and then let it cool down gradually, and that also further relieves any of the stresses in the steel. And so you get a steel that doesn't have any weak points. Under microscopic examination, you'll see that you have a very homogeneous steel. And the reason that's important is if a steel is going to crack or break, it's always going to be along, and it's usually always with lateral pressure, side-to-side pressure. And it's also going to always crack along, number one, the point that has the most stress, and number two, anywhere there's weakness in the metal. And the more of those factors you eliminate, the less likelihood you're going to have it. And that's what the Paul Bose heat treatment is he eliminates anywhere that it could be. It's purely homogeneous. It's the same exact steel, and the same molecules, no matter where in the steel you go. And there are no stress points. And what you get is an incredibly strong steel that performs. And that's really the so-called magic behind Paul Bose heat treatment. Now, he does it in a proprietary way that, we don't really know. But, we got an idea. Now, CBM, Crucible Metals, we do know about that. Those guys have been making incredible steels for years. And when you combine that incredible powdered steel technology with a really masterful heat treatment, well, you truly get a work of art in performance, and that's what this knife brings you. Is it like some of these other, Crewware or Elmax or all this other stuff? I don't know. I know a lot of Elmax blades that were having trouble with them chipping. The harder you get a knife, the more it's going to chip. The softer you get a knife, then the more abuse it'll take. It's tough. It won't hold as good an edge, but it's tough. So they strike this balance, and they wanna eliminate the disparity between those two points. They want it to be tough, but also be able to be really hard, but not so hard that it won't sharpen. And so they do all these things behind the scenes to try to eliminate that disparity and get where you can have all the qualities. Of course, you can't. There's always a trade-off. But that's the whole point behind Crucible Metals powdered steel. That's the whole point behind the Paul Bose heat treatment, is you get all of the best worlds. And this simple little knife, brings all that technology together. I don't know what else steel. I know Buck has experimented with several different steels, but one of the main steels besides 420HC that you can get is they've really, and they did a lot of work, but they really nailed down this S30V. So all that being said, that's why I highly recommend one. You're getting the best of both worlds, both strength and ability to hold an incredible edge and toughness. And you're getting all that in one package, which is, kind of hard to do for knife builders. And, the technology keeps improving. It keeps getting better and better. They're coming out with different steels. But, they start getting really expensive. And you look at cost versus benefit. And there's this thing they call the law of diminishing returns, to where are you really, getting that much improvement for the ridiculous amount that you pay for. To me, I wouldn't say it's the absolute height, but I think it's getting close. I think just this humble S30V with the really great heat treatment, you're getting high value. And if you paid like the full $99 for this knife, it might even be more now, I don't know, you are absolutely 100% getting your money's worth. And goes back to what I used to say before. If you had just one knife, and I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I tried it. I used this knife for a year like that. If you have one knife and only one knife, and to me that's the highest compliment that you can give any knife, this knife would do it. If you lived up in some cabin in the woods or whatever, and you just had one knife on you, every single piece of kit that you had on you had to be flexed into several different roles, this knife would do it. It would handle all your tasks. It's durable and tough enough. Now, any mechanical object can fail. Anybody out there, because it's the internet, they say, oh, I've had this wrong, this happened, that happened. Maybe, I don't know. What I can tell you is my experiences, and I have used the shit out of this knife. Maybe some guys have used them a lot more. Good for them, construction workers, whatever. But I have used what I consider the shit out of this knife for its intended purpose. And, and I've cut a lot of stuff. I've skinned animals, and I've lent it to somebody that skinned animals in front of me. I've used it for everyday tasks. I've carried it, and I could not be happier with this knife. So if you're in the market, check out the Cabellas Alaskan Guide, limited edition Buck 110 and S30V. I don't get a damn thing from it. I paid full, I got a little discount just because of my Cabela points, but I paid full retail for this knife, essentially, and I don't regret it at all. That's one thing about my channel. I'll always give you my honest opinion. It may be good, it may be bad, and it may be, it's all subjective. But in my opinion, in my subjective opinion, I don't think you can get really a better knife than this knife. And I would highly recommend you get one. Anyway, this has been Six Gun Slinging on a Sunday, reviewing one of my favorite knives that I've had for about 10 years and used the crap out of, and I can highly, highly recommend it. There's many different options that you can get. My option here that I carry it with, I don't even feel it. I can get it out really fast. Is this belt pouch, handmade belt pouch here. And you carry it on your belt, and you can whip the knife out. I'm not going to do it on here because I'm going to knock everything over. But if you pinch this knife, you pinch the blades like this, and you flick it down, the centrifugal force and the inertia will open the knife. You can do it one-handed. To close it one-handed, you push that button, and you press the back of the blade up against your leg, and you can close it with one hand. So people will say, I'd have a Buck 110, but it absolutely... I can't have it because it has to open with one hand. It's really easy to do with a little bit of practice, and you work through and you understand the manual arms. You can get this knife in and out really, really quickly. Guys that say all that, they're not using their head. I would definitely say it can take quite a bit of abuse, but any knife that you have, use it as a pocket knife. It's not a pry bar. It's not a hammer. It's not those things. If for some reason you are, in an emergency or whatever you consider an emergency, you have to press it into that roll, that's fine. But it's really, if you take care of your gear and you use it for what it's intended for, you should be all right. You can buy cool little titanium pocket pry bars that are like now they're I think you can get them as cheap as like $8, off of Temu or somewhere, and they're titanium, and and if you lose it or break it, whatever, you can keep it on your keychain. That's really hard on any knife blade, any steel, is lateral pressure, side to side, and you're just, why would you have a really great knife that served you well and break it by trying to wedge open an ammo container or something? Also, getting back to it, this knife, because I've handled it bloody and wet. We talk about tactical rolls. Could you defend yourself with this knife if you lived in a place where you can't carry guns or whatever? Yeah, you could definitely use it. You could use anything. You could use a big stick or a rock you find on the ground. So you could press it into that. Like I said, a one and done knife, this would definitely get it. Get the holster system that you're comfortable with. I think it'd be a little bit much for your pocket. If you did want to carry this knife in your pocket, what I would say is you can get a pair of jeans and you look how the pocket is. You have your girlfriend or you, if you're reasonably handy, and you sew a little straight line in your pocket that barely fits this Buck 110. And, depending on the Levi's jeans or Wrangler jeans or whatever you wear, you can fit your wallet, and then you'll have a dedicated pouch to store your Buck 110 if you want to carry it in your pocket, and that'll keep it from flopping over. And that's another option for you. And I know a lot of guys that have done that. Anyway, this has been Six Gun Slinging with a little Sunday review of the Cabela's Buck 110 Alaskan Guide. And if you like what you see, or you like how I do my style of just rambling and brambling, leave me a like and please subscribe. I'd love to welcome you to the channel and get your input on some knives. And anyway, other than that, we will catch y'all down the road.